Hello everyone, I'm Jack and I'm back. And today I am going to show you how to make a replica of a part that you already have. It could be made out of carbon fiber, fiberglass, metal, whatever. But the question comes up often of, I've got this part, I want to make sure I don't damage the original part, but I want to make a copy of it out of typically fiberglass or carbon fiber. So I'm going to show you how to do that from scratch. All right, so this that you see here, the blue part, is the actual part that I want to make a copy of. All right, it is not actually blue, but let me go ahead and get the part out and show you what it looks like. And it is a Pagani-like headlight section, I guess we'll call it. And I plan on putting this on a non-Pagani car. Now the part is actually painted and it's got a very nice paint finish. So the goal was, I want to make a copy of this, but I don't want to damage it. So the blue that you see is Plastidip. So the goal is cover the part with something to make sure that whatever I put on top of it won't damage the original paint finish or part. So I've tried a lot of different things. Let's see. One of the things I tried a long time ago is ceramic wax or ceramic coating. It wasn't this particular brand, it was another one. I just happened to find this, believe it or not, at Walmart at their clearance for $4 a bottle. I bought like 4 bottles just because I said, well, this will come in handy. So what I did first was I treated the part with the ceramic wax. Even though I know that's not going to be sufficient, I thought it was good enough. Now I could have used regular car wax or the part all paste wax, or they have bowling lane wax, any of those waxes. You want to try to avoid wax with silicone on it because silicone causes issues later on, specifically fish eyes and surface issues. All right, so I put the ceramic on there, and again, I would have used the wax, but I didn't have the wax. I had the ceramic on hand, I didn't have the wax. I didn't want to do a 2-hour round trip to go to the store, so I used that. Then I sprayed the Plastidip on it. All right, when I first sprayed the Plastidip, the instructions were kind of confusing. It said spray an even layer on there until you get a nice finish, and then it said wait 30 minutes in between coats. Well, the problem was when I sprayed it on there, it was like a mist coat. It wasn't enough there to have any thickness at all. One of the things I've read about people that have used the Plastidip is there is a minimum thickness. If you make it thinner than that, it will be almost impossible to come off because it won't come off in a sheet. It'll come off in little pieces. So it said, make sure you get it thick enough. So what I did, I just kept spraying and spraying until it was what I thought was thick enough. I would say 4 coats. It recommends 4 to 5 coats. That's probably what it was. The issue I had was the more I sprayed, the more it looked like a wrinkle finish. It did not look like a smooth finish. This was late in the evening. I had to go somewhere, and I just said, I'm going to go ahead and spray the part and see what happens. And it does say it takes 4 hours to be ready to handle. The next morning I got up and looked at it, and lo and behold, it smoothed itself out. Now you look, it's obviously not glass smooth, but I didn't expect that. It does have a very slight amount of orange peel, which I assume there's really no way to get it off, but I'm pleasantly surprised with the results. Now, one of the things I was going to try was to use wrap, vinyl wrap. But I talked to someone that had tried it before. He said that what happened with him was that it worked in the center area, but around the edges, it curled up because when you put the gel coat and or fiberglass on it, it generates heat, and the heat caused the edges to wrinkle. Now, the possible solution that would be make sure you wrap the vinyl around the edges, but I have 0 experience with vinyl wrap, so I decided to go this route instead. The other issue is, of course, there's a pretty difficult area. I imagine that area would be difficult to do with vinyl wrap. Again, I've never done vinyl wrap, so I don't know. but I did use the plastic coat. Now the issue with the plastic coat was it was hard to get this area right here and there and there and there covered because I didn't want to get any runs or sags or anything like that. I did get it, but it took a lot more work than I thought, more so than paint. I expected it to be exactly like paint. It wasn't exactly like paint, it was just similar. All right, so now I have an original part. It has the ceramic coating on it, and it has the Plastidip. Now, my assumption is I should be able to grab a corner somewhere, get it loose, and that whole thing will pull off. I don't know, and I can't try that before I do the rest of this. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. All right, at this point, I could take this and put gel coat. So if you look over there, there's my tooling gel coat. And tooling gel coat, you can use regular gel coat, but tooling gel coat's a little harder, a little more durable. So I'm going to use it because I'm going to make a mold and make multiples of these. All right, so the next thing to do would be to put gel coat on there. And before the gel coat, I want to put something so the gel coat doesn't stick to the Plastidip. Now I could just put it on there and say, hey, if it comes off with it, fine. If it doesn't, that's fine too. I'm not going to do that. So my options are, there's a lot of them. All right, so the first thing is I could just do wax. So I could wax the top of this Plastidip, and that wax should theoretically keep anything from sticking to it permanently. All right, so what I'm trying to do is get a surface in between the part, in this case the plastic coat, and the tooling gel coat so that the two don't stick to each other. All right, so again, I could use wax. Either of those waxes would work. Another option is what's called semi-permanent mold release, and that's this stuff right here. It is way easier to use than wax. It gets mixed results. Some people love it, some people don't. That's an option, all right? After I do that, those two will get a non-stick surface on top of my part. So theoretically, the gel coat should release very easily. All right, a third option, and this is a either or and, is what is called PVA. In this case, it's Pardal Film 10, and it is polyvinyl alcohol, I believe. And basically, sorry about that. What it is if you've ever as a kid put Elmer's glue on your hand and let it dry and then you peel it off, it's got a skin. This does the same thing, only of course the skin's a little bit thinner. This is a liquid. So there. And I've got a airless sprayer that I use, works perfectly for it. All right, so one of the challenges with this is that you want to get it on smooth, no runs and all of that. All right, so what you have to do, you can't just spray it on because then it gets runs. You can brush it on too, I've done that as well. You don't get quite the finish that you do with spraying it, but it's good enough if you're not trying to get a perfect surface. All right, so what I'll do is spray it on. The key to spraying the film on is you have to spray mist coats. And when I say mist coats, I mean it is so light of a coat that you can't really even tell it's on there. The first couple of coats will be a bunch of little drops. And then as you spray more and more, the drops will fill in and it'll become a solid layer. It takes 5-6 coats. The instructions say do that mist coat and then spray a flow coat. I have never been able to get that to work. When I do the flow coat, I end up with runs. So I don't do that anymore. I just keep doing mist coats. It'll help if you do it outside or in the heat because then that's water-based is one of the issues. The other thing is because that's water-based, it doesn't do like paint does. Paint you can put on pretty heavy, and because it's, chemical-based, the chemical evaporates real quick, and it's pretty much like you spray it. That doesn't work that way because it's water-based and it takes longer for the water to evaporate. It'll look great, and you come back to it a couple minutes later, and there's a sag or run somewhere because the water doesn't evaporate as quickly as you're used to with normal paint. So again, I'm going to do this outside. It's 95 degrees outside, so the water should evaporate real quick. I am still going to do the mist coat, and I am not going to try to do a flow coat. All right, so what'll happen is whatever I put on top of this piece to make it slick, which be that the wax or the permanent, semi-permanent mold release, that will create a barrier so that supposedly nothing will stick to it. All right. The part-all film, PVA, actually will lay on top of it and semi-stick to it. One of the tricks is if you add vinegar to, what'll happen is sometimes you'll get fish eyes and puddling because of the wax or the release. The way around that is, again, the light mist coat, plus you can put vinegar on in with the PVA, and it lowers the surface tension. So it makes it to where it doesn't want to gather up and create fish eyes and puddling. So I will do that as well, put vinegar on there. I'll spray it on lightly. All of that to say, I could make the part exactly like that and make a mold and then be done with it. But one of the other things I want to do later is I want to start doing vacuum, both vacuum on the part with hand lay or vacuum infusion when I get to carbon fiber. So they say that you need a mold with at least 6 inches of surface around so that when you put the plastic on top of everything to seal it and vacuum bag it, it'll create, you have enough surface area to create a seal. All right, this is a piece of foam board, and what I did was I just went and bought a piece of foam board, put this on here, and then drew the shape of the part I want on top of it. Now I have a border all the way around it. I can put a piece of plastic on top of that, pull a vacuum, or put the whole thing in a vacuum bag, pull a vacuum, and should be able to get the top surface all smooth like I want. And that will get rid of air bubbles, pinholes, a bunch of things supposedly. We'll see. All right, I could have done that. I could have just made the mold out of just this piece, but because I want to do the vacuum later, I have to have a border around it with enough room to create a vacuum. So that's what I've done here. What I did was I put this part on top of it, drew an outline, and then I had to make the holes so that this would fit down in there like that. Now, you would think that this is a flat surface because it looks like it. It's not. It actually has a slight contour to it. So if you look over here, you can see this thing rocks. So what I'm going to have to do is pull this up a little bit, and that. And these two, it's rocking from, if you look here, right here, it's rocking around that point. And over here, it's rocking around that point. So what I'm going to do is I have my hot glue gun right here and hot glue sticks. I'm going to run a bead of hot glue all the way around where this line is. Right here. So I'll put a bead of hot glue. I'm going to make it very hot because it's not going to be easy to do this by myself. If I had another set of hands, I would have them help me, but I don't. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm also only going to go from here around. You can see I made marks for myself there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on my leg. Put my knee right there. Here, let me go ahead and show you exactly what I'm going to do. I am trying to manipulate this as little as possible because I don't want to damage the plastic coat. All right, so I'm going to lay this. I've got the mark. So I'm going to push this till my knee is basically underneath here. My other knee is underneath here. And if you look, it's rocky. So then I'm going to use my hand and push down right here. So what that's going to do is that's going to get this as close, there we go, as close as I can to flush all the way around. And I'll use my other hand over here. I marked it here and here because without an extra hand, there's a gap over here. So if you look, we'll do that. Anyway, no matter what I do over here, I can't get that area over there to be flat. It's still gonna have a gap there. Not sure if you can see that. But anyway, there's a gap there. I don't want that gap, so what I'm going to do is glue all of this, and then I'm going to come in here, put another bead of hot glue there, and hold that down. If I had some kind of clamp right now, I would do that, but I don't have it here. I have it at the shop. I should have grabbed it, and I didn't. So anyway, once I do that, then I will have enough surface here that I can make a mold with a shelf area around the perimeter so that when I make a part from it, I can create a vacuum. Now, speaking of vacuum, another way would be to put this whole part inside of a vacuum bag. So that is an option. We'll see. I'm not going to do that here because I want to do the vacuum infusion, and you can't do the vacuum infusion that way. All right, let's see, what else do we have? Okay, so let's look at some of the other things that I'm going to be using later. All right, so I do have the plastic tip. Now, I got this on clearance years ago. It's like $8 to $10 a can. They had on clearance for like, I don't know, $2 or $3 a can. So I bought a bunch of cans, even though I don't particularly like this color. For what I'm doing, I knew it didn't matter. All right, but I was at Walmart, and they have the same stuff in a flat black. All right, so this is something I'm going to try to experiment with. Then Rust-Oleum has the same thing. They call it vinyl wrap. It looks the same, peelable vinyl coating. So I'm going to try it. It's $10 a can. This is a flat black as well. I'm going to compare the two later in a test. Third thing is Rust-Oleum makes another one, but this is a gloss black. So I'm interested to see, can I really get a gloss black surface in this peelable vinyl? We will find out again in a future experiment. To me, a lot of that is latex, basically. It may not be, but they seem similar. It happens to be Halloween, so I found this. Luckily, it was the last bottle they had of it. So it is liquid latex that you use for making masks and such. I am going to try it. When I put it on, I am going to try to use a paintbrush to do this. This case, I've got a chip brush, but I did buy I was at Walmart, the best brush they had to try to get it as smooth as possible. So I'm going to try it and see, hey, can I get a liquid latex smooth coat on there? If that works really well, it could replace the plastic dip. If it doesn't, no big deal. All right, and then of course I had to get hot glue. This is the less expensive hot glue. And then I did find some black ones. So I'm not going to use them in this case because they're more expensive, but there are cases where I may want to have, for some reason, black hot glue. Fiberglass mat. So I've got this. You can get cloth too, but cloth you have to be, it's much more difficult to get it to lay in, like in this area right in here. You'd have to cut a bunch of reliefs and stuff. The mat, what happens is it has a binder in there. It's a bunch of small, let's say inch-long pieces of fiberglass. Right there, you can see it. And then they're stuck together with an adhesive or a binder. That binder happens to dissolve when you use polyester resin. So what happens is when you first start out, it's kind of stiff and hard to get. But once you put the polyester resin, the binder dissolves, and then you can get this to go into some very intricate areas, much more so than cloth. Although cloth is thinner and easier initially until the binder releases. All right, so speaking of which, there's some polyester resin that I got. This is finishing resin. It has wax in it. It's not really the right stuff to be using, but it's what I have on hand. So the difference is the wax comes to the surface, makes the resin cure because it is air inhibited cure. If you don't have the wax, then the side that's exposed to air basically won't harden. It'll harden a couple of days, but it won't harden in any reasonable amount of time. You can cover it with something to make it harden, but again, if it's the last layer, use the wax, and it's exposed, use the wax resin. If it's not, they have laminating resin that does not have the wax. All right, next thing you see over there is rollers. What this is for is once you put on the fiberglass on top of this, you've got to get it flat, smooth, and all the air bubbles out. You can use those rollers. They also have special rollers that are supposed to pop the bubbles. I found that this is just as good. and dirt cheap to do. And I don't have to clean up afterwards. I just throw those away. The problem with the other rollers is they're typically aluminum, and if you leave it too long, then it's really difficult to clean. All right, you can clean it with acetone or vinegar, or there's a bunch of other things that you can clean it with. I'm lazy and I try to not do any extra work. Okay, that's all I can think of right now. So my next move is to put the hot glue around the border like I showed you, put it on my knee, hold it down, get this thing glued down as best as I can between those two parts, come back and do the back side, that small area there. Once I do that, I am going to get I actually have some clay. You can use mulling clay, whatever. It's not going to be 100% flat. And I obviously don't want the fiberglass to go underneath this, because then the part won't come out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a bridge to fill in any gap. So it's going to go straight down from here. I'll cram the clay inside of there, and then once I'm through, I'll take a sharp implement, go all the way around the perimeter, and make it to where it's flat. All right, okay, that's it. So this is all, basically call it lesson 1 on how to make your own copy of a part and composite without damaging the original part. Obviously it's theoretical. I haven't done all of this stuff, so this is my first try at it. So you'll find out if it works or if it doesn't work. All right. Oh, and I did realize something else. I need to put tape underneath these screw holes. Otherwise, the fiberglass could go down in, the resin could go down in and seep behind, which I obviously don't want to have. I also need to close up those holes. I will use some foam board. I've got extra around here, and I will close that up. All right, the other thing is, in the past, I've used those, I'll show metal things that you use to basically, for wood, you hammer them into the wood from one, you drill a hole, hammer them into the wood, and they've got little spikes that go into the wood, and then from the opposite side, you screw a bolt in to hold everything together. I've used those to go into, let's say, a hole right there where I need to get the part out. So there needs to be something to pull it. Sometimes it's hard to pull. So if I take those holes right there, put those pieces in there, and fiberglass them in place, then when I make the part, I can either use air to blow in those two holes, or I can put actual bolts or screws in there and screw them in to force the part out, to release the part from the mold. So I'll show you that when I get to that stage as well. All right, that's all I've got. Like, subscribe, hit the alert, hit the thanks if you want to donate. And if you don't like what we're doing, you don't know Jack. Bye.